Hello and welcome to our webcast. I'm Amy Pendergrass with Moss Adams, and I'm going to get us started for today's session, 2023 Retail Industry Outlook. We're pleased that you've joined us today. And before we begin, I'm going to play a brief housekeeping video.
Welcome, and thanks for joining. We're pleased to present our continuing professional education webcast series. Before we begin, please keep the following in mind. You can customize how you view our presentation and interact with the presenter. For better viewing, close all other applications and turn up your speaker volume. You can adjust window size and placement or enter full screen mode using the controls at the top right of the window or dragging the bottom right-hand corner to resize. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a series of icons that relate to a different aspect of our session. You can download a PDF of today's slides from the Slide Deck and Handouts widget. You can ask questions by typing in the Q&A window and clicking Submit. We'll do our best to answer all questions or follow up via email. If you experience technical difficulty, refresh your browser by hitting the F5 key. Today's session offers 1 CPE credit. To receive credit, you must meet the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy requirements. You must attend at least 50 minutes of the session and respond to at least 75% of polling questions. To participate in the polls, please check the button next to your answer within the slide window and click Submit. We'll track your progress and alert you when you've earned CPE credit. You can then click the certificate icon in the CPE Progress widget and download your CPE certificate. Don't worry if you can't download your CPE certificate today. We'll email you a copy in 2 weeks. If attending this webcast in a group, you must complete our group CPE attendance sheet, available in our Slide Deck and Handouts widget to receive credit. Please have all group members sign it and send only 1 sheet per group. CPE credit can only be awarded to participants registered as themselves and isn't available for participants who view the on-demand version. This presentation is not legal, investment, or accounting advice. We encourage you to seek the counsel of a professional service provider to apply this content to your specific circumstances.
All right, and now I would like to turn it over to Frank Kaufman, partner and the Retail and E-commerce National Practice Leader here at Moss Adams. Frank, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Amy. Well, welcome everybody. I'm very excited. I think we started this now 14 years ago, doing our annual Retail Outlook, and it's grown. I'm actually speaking to more than 500 people. Every single state in the U.S. is represented. So as you heard in the intro, if you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat room. We'll do our best to answer them. We should have time. If not, we'll follow up later. The interaction is what is helpful. If you ask a question, I will guarantee you that there's at least a dozen other people thinking the same. So we can help each other out. And you will also see there's polling questions. So we'll pause after we have those polling questions and figure out, what indication of trends or things we're getting out of that. On the slide here, you can see, in addition to myself, 3 other Moss Adams partners, Sharon, Kris, and Mike. They'll all be talking to you about different areas of their expertise. So I think we can get going. So obviously you can see the agenda here. I'll do with the overall general retail landscape, and we'll talk about that, and then we'll start diving in deeper and deeper. There's also a couple areas that are a bit of disruptors this past year. Resale and luxury and grocery, all those categories you're hearing a lot about in the news, so we'll address those. So let's take a look at the overall landscape. Looking backwards for a minute, we all were glad to get back out in the world. Travel boomed, and dollars chasing travel were amazing last year. Also, I think we're all feeling pretty good about the health risks now. So especially in the second half of last year, you saw much more travel. You saw people going back to stores, and it sort of posed an interesting scenario, because after sitting behind a screen as we're doing right now, we got used to some things happening instantaneously and just pushing buttons. And then we go back to the stores for the experience, And if anything during that experience doesn't happen as sort of seamlessly as you're sitting at a screen, then there was an issue. So omni-channel and the interaction and really the smoothness that occurs with or does not has become even more important. On top of that, there's a number of the retailers that are on the call today are public companies, and you're well aware of the increased reporting guidance and just the responsibility you have now as a public company. And even without a public company, probably the more compelling argument is the consumer wants to know that you're taking care of the planet. So what's going on there? What are you doing is important. Your brand message is very important. Then one other kind of interesting thing, and we'll hear more about some of this, and you'll see some stats. There's polarization going on. So at the luxury end, things have been very, very strong and don't seem to be impacted by a lot of the economics. On the other hand, there's a move sort of in the middle going towards discounts, and you'll see that in stores opening. So the masses are looking for price, and it impacts a number of areas. So see, these are additional challenges. I'm probably reiterating the problems that you've dealt with in the last year, but food costs, and you'll hear a bit about what's going on in grocery, supply chain. We're seeing movement back to some localization now because of challenges with getting product. Also freight, and for most of our clients, if you're importing from Asia, about a year ago, you were paying about $3,500 a container. And then fast forward a couple months and you're paying $25,000 to $30,000 a container. And now it's back to about $1,500 a container. So the volatility of that freight, which was historically not that meaningful of a number, became a big deal to deal with and impacted margin. I think it's normalized now. So those are the challenges. Here's another thing that hopefully you can all see, obviously several colors. The one that I'll argue that you play in most is the blue line there, which is the credit card debt. So as you can see, biggest lion's share is mortgage. So the orange section is mortgage, and yes, it's at an all-time high. Interest rates are now, let's say the 30-year mortgage is about 7%, which is double what it was 18 months ago. And what's also interesting here on this slide is the red. That is actually the balance of student loans, and very hot topic right now with, will that get forgiven? Will it not? Just to get a picture of the magnitude, the student loans exceed the consumer credit card debt, which is about $1 trillion. So there's a lot of big decisions that are happening in the marketplace, which will impact disposable dollars that could be spent in your stores or online with you. Here's a little bit more on the consumer debt side, and there's 4 colors on here. First, maybe not as relevant, so we'll tackle it quickly. The red and the lighter, maybe pink colors. That's HELOC loans, your home equity lines of credit, and the lighter salmon color is the availability under that. So that tends not to be as dramatic. It's just a factor of most of that gets paid down over time. The other 2 colors that you'll see, the dark blue, that's about 1 trillion. That is the consumer debt that I was talking about for credit cards, okay? If you look above the highest line, that is the availability or the line limit, I would say, on a credit card. So if somebody owes $1,000 on their credit card, typically their credit limit is about $4,500. So if we ponder for a minute, okay, that's a lot of availability. It really gets down to what is the consumer attitude? Are they feeling comfortable? Are they feeling, I don't know, a lot of pressure? As you saw, the biggest portion is mortgage. Where are they at? So it's not really a factor of the consumer doesn't have the ability to spend. So I guess that's good news for all of you retailers, that if you can make it enticing, they can make a purchase. Here's another data point that I think is relevant to talk about market trend. So these are the store openings and closings for 2022 and what's planned for 2023. And it's not all encompassing, but the total store openings for 2022 were about 5,000 stores. And you can see here about 40% of that. And if you look at those openings, they're all in the discount arena. Okay. Now, if you look to the right, you can see what's closed. And while Family Dollar did close 100 stores, net they're up 500 stores for 2022. The total closures were about 2,000 stores. So what we're seeing is net increases in footprint as far as numbers, but in the closing side, it's more focused on, frankly, in the apparel space. So if we say, well, is that trend continuing? You can see down below all of the major additions to the stores. All of those folks are doing it again. 5 below, just to make sure that's not 1,000 stores in 2023, but it's over the next 3 years. And you can see similar closures for the group that has been closing. To me, my takeaway is, again, this polarization concept. If you're going to be sort of in middle America or middle price point, you got to think they're really looking at price. If you're in the luxury category, it's not so much driven there. If we take a bigger look across the globe, because that last slide hopefully was positive, but to many of you, maybe it was negative. There's a projected solid growth rate going forward for next 3 or 4 years, about a little over 4% a year. Globally, there's challenges, right, in the economy. There's the war. We're not sure what's happening with China still. It's an ongoing discussion. And in Europe also, we're starting to see some blips on the positive side. But here in the US, it's actually looking pretty good long term. Most people have a bit of an inventory challenge right now that's projected to go through about the middle of this year. And we'll talk a little bit more about a software solution that we've helped our clients work with to help work out of the inventory. And in fact, you'll hear a little later, we'll do another webcast in about a month specifically on trying to deal with what may be considered an inventory glut. But the challenge, as I mentioned earlier, with the sourcing globally, whether it's delays, ships sitting out in the water, container prices, one of the big trends we're seeing is a return back to global localization of the supply chain. So whether it's in the US or it's in Mexico or Latin America, we're seeing a movement away from Asia back in to be able to meet consumer demand on a more predictable basis. So our sort of outtakes coming from out of all we're seeing is you have to be able to move quickly. You said people are shifting supply. Long-term relationships are getting upended so that you can meet the quick consumer demand. So the only way to do that is to have a fully interactive system that talks. You're connecting your AI to your technology back all the way to your supply chain and being able to use predictive and prescriptive analytics. You'll hear more about that today as well. Due to the debt level that we talked about, consumers are very focused on leverage. like I said, there's availability on their credit card balances. They're not necessarily going to use it, and price in the masses is driving decisions. Here, we talk about buy online, pick up in store versus last mile costs. So if you go back to the middle of the pandemic, we wanted our stuff, we wanted it delivered to our doorstep, and sort of that was our only option, so we didn't care so much about the last mile costs. Well, turns out it's not inexpensive to have something delivered from your local store. And now that there's an option, we're seeing the consumer not only go back to the store for the experience, but they're also going back to the store to avoid what could be, you know, 50% premium on what they're buying just to have it delivered. So last mile is, if you're going to continue to differentiate yourself by getting it to their household, you got to find a way to do it inexpensively. The other thing we're seeing as people are going back to the stores, as I mentioned earlier, they expect complete knowledge. So when they're dealing with an associate, it can no longer be somebody who knows how to ring them up on the register. They have to answer the questions about what's in stock. Can you get it shipped to me? Can I get it delivered to my house? That you really have to have the people, the retailers that are doing well are ones that are putting the time into training their associates. And of course, personalization, that's not anything new. We've been talking about that for several years now. But when those people do come into the store, how do your associates know about them like they are built into your online database? So again, gotta make them feel special. And then the other big thing we're seeing, of course, is it is now okay to talk, in addition about physical well-being, about mental well-being. So if you have products in that category, you're probably seeing substantial increases. If not saying everybody should run to that category, but understand that even greeting the customer, thinking about how they're feeling that particular day makes a difference. So I think, Amy, are you going to go ahead and launch this?
Yes.
Okay.
And so we do have our first polling question up, and they are located on the slides that we're presenting. You're going to select your answer and then hit the submit button. So this one is, what are the primary growth drivers in your business in 2023? And you can choose more than one. A, digital and e-commerce. B, physical stores. C, delivery options. D, new products. E, all of the above. Or F, other. And if you do select other, we're curious what that is, so go ahead and drop that in the Q&A window. And we'll leave this up for a little while longer to make sure everyone can get their CPE. All right, we'll do 5 more seconds. All right, Frank, here you go.
Okay, so let's digest this a little bit. I would love to know what the other is, because that's a substantial number. Okay, so digital and e-commerce. Clearly, that's been a focus for a few years. And what we saw last year in 2022 was, I guess I'll say, a drop in e-commerce, if you want to call it that, as compared to 2021, but not truly a drop. So if you were to chart the course outside of the pandemic, it's still growing in double digits year over year. And so I think if those of you who have identified that, if you sort of double down in that area, you will find that you're going to continue to grow. I know you might have taken a position in inventory and got a little surprised in June or July, or maybe you're still working through it. But for sure the consumer is going to continue to spend a little bit more each year in that space. And so interesting on the delivery options, which maybe tells me that sort of the buy online, pick up in store, you're seeing that, and you're not as worried about getting it to the porch immediately. So, and then of course there's a substantial portion of you that got to figure it all out. So hopefully that's one bit of information that's helpful. And now we'll move on to, I think Sharon is next.
Great. Thanks, Frank. I think the results of that poll segue quite nicely into our next topic, which is discussing digital commerce. So, I mean, I think it's no surprise that we've been seeing kind of that upward trend in digital commerce for quite a few years now, and this trend's definitely expected to continue into the future. To put this in perspective, there's a few stats on this slide, but the one that I think is most notable is this first bullet, which is online retail sales in 2022, which that does exclude travel, surpassed $1 trillion for the first time ever. And in 2020, this $1 trillion mark wasn't originally projected to be hit until 2025. But with the growth of online shopping, primarily due to the pandemic, that shift to e-commerce sales has increased at a much faster rate than originally projected. Additionally, I think a lot of this growth is coming from the consumer's continued use and reliance on mobile devices, with mobile sales increasing 26% in the fourth quarter of 2022 compared to prior years. So pretty staggering number. This shift, I think, is really what's going to continue to grow the e-com business into the future as well. However, as we all know, that kind of growth through mobile devices does create a lot of challenges for retailers, as the overall conversion rate is still significantly lower for consumers shopping via mobile versus on their traditional desktop computer. So that continuous improvement on the mobile purchase experience is critical, as mobile users are faced with, working with smaller screens, and they have difficulty in working through the search functions versus when they're on a larger desktop computer. Additionally, that easy and seamless checkout experience is key in conversion of customers as well. As we noted on this slide, e-com platforms definitely understand these challenges for e-commerce retailers. Shopify and Wix stores, who really are the leaders in the United States for e-com platforms, are offering retailers various innovative ways for their customers to overall interact with their products. So they're offering augmented or virtual reality, as well as providing quicker and kind of more efficient ways to purchase, via the web. So moving on to this next slide here, we've noticed and we've seen e-commerce sales increase among the majority of all categories in 2022. This is obviously expected to continue into 2023 and into the future. But the highest grossing category was in grocery, baby, and pet for 2022. And to put this in perspective, back in Q4 of 2018, Americans actually spent less than $15 billion buying groceries and baby products online, compared to Q4 2022, where that spends over $64 million. So significant growth in this category. And primarily, as I mentioned previously, that key driver is that increase related to the mobile devices, which usage grew at twice the rate of your traditional desktop e-commerce. Additionally, as Frank mentioned, that continued popularity of the buy online, pick up curbside, which a lot of your grocery stores and larger retailers are offering and kind of continue to refine as the customer continues to want that quick, cheaper way of obtaining their products. Additionally, we're seeing online retail is really impacted by social commerce. So there's a significant amount of engagement between the consumer and brand-sponsored content on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And while these views don't necessarily translate to sales, there's a significant correlation between the views by these viewers and the ability for the retailers to build that brand awareness and the loyalty with their customers. So some strategies that we're seeing e-commerce retailers focus on, the first being that retention of your existing customer through personalization. So we're all aware that customer acquisition costs can be really expensive. So the more online retailers can connect with their customer, the better chance they have of that customer returning for future purchases and future visits to the websites. Customers are also looking to obtain their product quickly and affordably. So those programs, as I mentioned, buy online, pick up in store, allows customers to receive their orders the same day while also avoiding some of those expensive shipping costs and other wait times that may be experienced through purchasing online. And then the customer demands kind of that seamless integration between physical and online presence. So the physical stores that also have an online presence are allowing for more of those personal touch points, but are also providing the ability for the customer to continue shopping while at home or at any time. This is a challenge for your purely digital retailers, is they have to spend a significant more time on advertising and marketing, which ultimately can lead to less profitability. And then finally, faster checkout experience has been a critical factor for shoppers, specifically via that mobile device. So retailers focusing on the customer's ability to complete the transactions with minimal page loads, as well as offering shopping features that improve search capabilities, is super helpful for retailers to kind of continue to trend on that growth trajectory in digital commerce. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mike Parker to discuss data-driven strategies and analytics.
Hey, Sharon. Thank you for that. As many of you know, there's a lot of technologies we could talk about today, but for the purposes of the day, we want to focus on data and analytics and really how to effectively use that. As Frank and Sharon have both said, there's a lot going on in your businesses, and really want to talk through how these areas can help you in many ways across in different facets of your business. So the first thing is really having a data-driven strategy and using analytics in the right way. Obviously, most of you know the use of data in the right way can provide the right insights, measurement on the health of the business in key processes, as well as the ability to make decisions on. We talked about different delivery models, different buying models, and the idea there is really having that visibility and having that clarity in what is your customer doing? What is your business doing? How does those match up, and really being able to make the right decision, have the right visibility. And what we found is interesting is and this 83% of CEOs want their organization to be more data-driven, but yet only 30% of the people felt like they were in a data-driven organization. So what that means to us is that there's a large chasm between where companies want to be and where they're at. And that covers a very broad spectrum of uses and use cases. Some of the areas, again, cost, do you have things in the right model? Are you using the right shipping methods? Supply chain disruptions. Frank went through the cost of containers, the variability in time, by vendor, by location, by channel. A lot of those are very have a wide variability today, and so having that insight and that foresight into it is more critical than it has ever been. And a lot of that, again, if you don't get it right, decreased customer loyalty, higher, lower close rate on your e-commerce. If they're logging in, they're looking around, not seeing what they want, they go somewhere else. And so being able to use data and analytics in a way to drive your business is of paramount importance. And there are different kinds of analytics that are used in the business. So it's not just about that forward looking. So really, as we break down analytics, we think there are all different types of analytics that all have a purpose in the business. Many people focus on a single type of these analytics or a single use case as part of siloed programs, approaches. There's no kind of comprehensive strategy. But each one of these, again, has a very valuable use case. So we believe the key is to create an overall strategy of what do you need and what can data provide to your business, as well as understand the requirements for each of these facets. Really, I mean, the goal is to provide the right information to the right person in your business at the right time. And if you can accomplish that, the impact can be really tremendous. I mean, you've got descriptive or hindsight. How did my business do? What were the results? What came out of the programs that I had? You have insight, which is, again, what is moving the meter? What's positive? What's negative? How am I doing? And then you've got the foresight to where do I need to be in order to effectively run my business, effectively engage with my customer. So all of those pieces are really critical in the overall success of your business. And to be able to put all of those types of analytics in place in a cohesive and comprehensive way is really the critical component, because all of that is important to your business into understanding and having the visibility, having the right decision-making capabilities, both looking backwards, looking at today, as well as looking forward and where you need to be. And again, each of those are very critical to overall success for retailers. So as we look at the data-driven strategy and analytics a little further, this can drive awareness, it can drive decisions, it can drive visibility into many, many areas of your business. So this isn't just about inventory, or it isn't just about customer engagement. It really can be used all across your business. And again, a lot of the same data and key pieces can be used in many decision points. But the really key success here is a few things. One is just timing and availability. Again, I talked about having the right data to the right person at the right time, so they can make a decision about your business, whether that's someone that's in your customer base or someone in your inventory, your warehouses, someone making decision on what products to buy. There's a lot of scenarios there. Also, data and analytics isn't really only to inform. We believe that one of the big keys is to embed that data and the decisions into the processes. If you do that effectively, it can drive automation, it can drive decision making. Again, it can drive, where do I have product? What product do I buy? An example that we have on the screen here is in using predictive modeling to define a demand curve. And then, that demand curve can be by channel, it can be by location, there's a lot of different facets to it. And then your marketing team generally picks a price point that's aligned to the brand, the channel, and then you can drive all of that into a centralized planning and automate the embedding of that information into all these areas: distribution, supply chain, inventory, finance and accounting, your staffing. How many people do you have in store? Frank talked about training, empowering your employees with the right data. And really, again, the timing of this is as critical as the actual data itself, because every day you spend going through spreadsheets, analyzing, making this data is one less day you have in your supply chain. As you've seen many times, supply chain has been very, very variable, and really being able to understand that by channel, by product is really one of the very keys to success in engaging with your customers effectively, running the business effectively, keeping your costs in check, and not having critical issues in any of these areas. So, as Frank talked about, we use there's many different technologies that can be used. I mean, one of the ones we use really effectively, we work with all the BI tools, but we also work with a product called Workday Adaptive Planning. And really, what Workday does is it really allows you again to have that predictive, have that, how do I forecast that? How do I take that data and then again, I drive it into my process? How do I effectively plan? How do I effectively forecast? How do I effectively budget? And allows your business to make better decisions across your business. Again, you may be looking at customer engagement. You may be looking at cost of goods sold. You may be looking at supply chain, again, by channel, by product, by vendor. And you want to be informed about the current status of your business. You want to be are you making the right decisions, the wrong decisions, or do you need to adjust things like that? Also, again, the forward looking of, seasonality. Are people buying certain products at certain times? Are they buying via certain channels? Are you getting the, buy online, pick up in store? Do you need to do, more of that? All of that can be incorporated in Workday Adaptive Planning so that you can model this, you can forecast this, you can plan for it, and you can make smarter decisions about how you run your business and what the impact on all of those decisions will be across your business. So that's very important in, again, getting things right and having the right model, the right cost structure, the right engagement model, everything about your business. So it really covers all spectrums within your business. So that, Amy, I'll turn it over to you for the next polling question.
All right, thank you. So the second polling question is, in what way do you plan on leveraging your data this year? Personalize the customer experience, empower associates, track product availability, manage the supply chain, enhance growth. F is all of the above, and G is other. And again, if you select other, we are curious what that other is, so please drop it in the Q&A window. And then while you're responding, just a reminder that if you want to receive CPE for today's webcast, you will need to respond to at least 3 of the 4 polling questions. A few more seconds. All right, here are the results.
All right, it seems like everybody, a lot of people are doing all the above, which doesn't surprise, I think, any of us. I think it is interesting to see within those categories kind of the variability there. But again, I think the nice thing is a lot of these are tied together in our world from a technology perspective. So encouraging to see that people are looking at many, many different areas. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Frank. And
well, Mike, I just want to make one comment on here before we go forward. Everything is connected, and I'm just going to run through a quick example. So I'm a retailer, and I'm challenged with obviously having fresh product on the stores. I want to get good margins. So I think where are my sort of my sources of supply that I can get maintain the best markup. However, if I don't have stuff in the store, then 100% of margin on a zero sale is still zero. So when I think through sort of the interesting parts of an opportunity, if you're an apparel retailer, right? And so I happen to be wearing a cut and sew shirt today. I can't tell, Mike, you might be having a t-shirt, a long sleeve t-shirt, but let's just talk about the t-shirt world for a minute. A lot of that's produced domestically because it's tubular knitting. It comes off the machine in such a manner you can screen print and literally produce something inside of a week, maybe delivery inside of 3 weeks. That's about the same time that a product is coming from Asia on the water with no glitches. So you need to have an idea of what kind of sales are going through, but you also need to be able to build out your supply chain so you have alternatives. So you can quickly pivot if in fact there is a supply chain issue, and you can get more domestically. So that's the kind of holistic thinking when you see this data, that you can connect the dots and keep the top line growing. So tools like this, I don't know how companies try to manage without. We do see a lot of people that ultimately don't have the connectivity. In almost every case, it ends up in too much inventory of something that I can't sell and not enough inventory of where I can. So I would encourage taking a look at this. I'll go on. I'll let you move from here.
Frank, I just have one comment on the whole concept around data, especially inventory. It used to be inventory was very internal looking, right? That you needed to know what your inventory was so that you could order and do other things. Where today it's much different. The customer expects when they go to your website to see if you have it, right? And if you say you do, then you better have it. If they see that it's available in a store, they're going to go there and expect it to be there. So it's really moved beyond just an internal tool to manage purchasing into that whole customer experience. And how do you retain that loyalty? Because you'll lose it to competitors if you get that wrong.
Yeah, you're right, Kris. And some of the best retailers, especially now, when everybody's home for a year or two, if they show up in the store and the product isn't in the store, that empowered associate can quickly go using, who knows, an iPad or something to go, well, we have it in stock at the warehouse. I can have it to your house tomorrow if you would like, in this size. Or, I see you have the blue one, I want the green one. Oh, we can get that same way. So the instant ability to access what you have in inventory and solve the customer's problem is really what is going to help you win. All right.
Great. Thank you, Mike, Kris, and Frank. So we're going to shift now into some emerging areas and really center our discussions around resale and luxury. Resale has definitely been a focus this year. You're hearing it and seeing it pop up kind of all over the place. And I think ultimately that's driven by just the financial uncertainty with the focus on sustainability by the consumer, which ultimately has become a focus for retailers. So I think we all are familiar with the concept of resale. This isn't new, but historically this has been a model that's been for marketplaces, such as Poshmark and ThredUp, where you didn't necessarily see brands entering into the secondhand market. However, more and more brands are kind of driving that next wave of secondhand shopping. They're adopting resale programs similar to what Patagonia, Madewell, and REI have, but what they're also doing is they're kind of creating their own take on resale. So they're offering discounts, gift cards, or partnering with various charities in an effort to connect with what the overall value is of their customer. So a few examples of this is LaFleur offers a discount if you return gently used items to the brand. What they found is that those who use their program opt for a gift card versus basically cash back on the exchange of that used product. And then the customer ends up purchasing more than the value of the gift card on either new or used products. Madewell's focused more on the sustainability side, partnering with Habitat for Humanity to recycle jeans to build housing projects or products. But the jeans that are still wearable, they are putting back into their resale program. So as noted on this side, with Morningstar estimating that resale could hit $300 billion by 2031, which is staggering. Retailers are definitely realizing that resale is a revenue strategy and also provides kind of that personalization or connection with those customers that value the value of secondhand and conservation. So in just the last few months, we're still seeing kind of this rise. J.Crew, Canada Goose, Francesca's have all announced their launch into resale. So clearly this is a trend that we're going to see continuing into 2023. Also, along with that concept of resale, it's not just with the lower end brands. Luxury brands are definitely incorporating resale into their business models as well. Most recently, Gucci and Armani have been specifically focused on growth with their millennial and Gen Z customers, which have an interest in kind of vintage, high-end luxury, and conservation. So kind of a blend of all of those things that makes resale appealing to the consumer. So by adding this second hand, it does provide easier ways for those customers to access the luxury brand via, secondhand purchases. And it also kind of speaks to that customer that's focused on the value, sustainability, or both. It's also helped drive traffic to stores and e-commerce sites. So resale, though, does, on the other hand, create new challenges for your retailers that are entering into this space, primarily around the high costs associated with kind of the sorting, the warehousing, the washing of the inventory, as well as just kind of understanding the pricing, the best way to price those used items, and authenticity. It's pretty hard to represent the condition of the resale item that's held for sale, especially when it's being sold online. So what we're seeing is, to deal with this, some retailers have partnered up with third-party resale companies, so ThreadUp and other companies that they can outsource that resale and inventory process to. The problem with this is this can be an expensive avenue as well versus taking it in-house. But just overall, despite these challenges, retailers that haven't adopted a strategy around resale could definitely be at a disadvantage given the rise in popularity and demand of just the need and want for resale products. With that, we're going to go into a polling question. Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Sharon. So the third question is, will your company add resale to the 2023 strategy? A, yes. B, no. C, not sure. D, yes, in the next 12 months. Or E, yes, in the next 24 months. We'll leave this up a little bit longer so everyone can respond. And then while you're responding, if you would like a copy of today's slides, you can download them now from the folder that says slide deck and handouts. And then we're also sending them via email tomorrow, along with a recording of this webcast.
Yeah, and I think one thing that, I've seen it, the National Retail Federation every year, resale's been a topic. And what's really changing now is accessibility. It used to be hard to figure out how to get product in the resale market, where now it's showing up in a search just as easily as new products. So companies that don't think they need to compete against it, really need to rethink their strategies around that. And then the last thing would be, just if you think about, the whole social aspects of it, when you look at the life cycle of a product, a lot of brands are looking to incorporate this into their overall thought process and the way they communicate around product life cycles, so that consumers can see the end of a product, right? It doesn't end up in a landfill or somewhere else. It's reused. And you can also offer things like trade-in and other things to continue to get people to buy the new items also. So there's a lot of upside to this, but you need to be thoughtful about how you're going to compete in this environment, even if you're not in the resale space yourself.
Great points. Great. Well, the results are in, and it looks like no is the winner here, but it'll be interesting to revisit this potentially, in 6 months to a year and see if some of those strategies have changed.
I think maybe the reason it's no more than anything else is it's a hard business to understand. It's sort of a different area. There's challenges because if you're promoting product and then it's like, okay, well, is this going to cannibalize my existing sales? And I think it's going to be a bit similar to the whole concept itself as the ESG is. When first came out, it sounded great conceptually, but the costs were so prohibitive that people opted out. And then the consumer comes back, and as the consumer is more emphatic about taking care of the environment and making the purchase decisions based on that, now businesses are moving that way. So I think if it would be a different answer if it were in the next 5 years. I would see a predominantly yes, because I think that's where the world's going to demand that we head.
And I would add, Frank, that most of the retailers that aren't in the resale, like that's not what they do. They're almost all partnering with someone else to get into this. So they're not going at it on their own to try and figure out how to do this. They're looking, how can we partner, bring another partner into our business to reduce some of the the expertise is definitely required. There's a lot of investment that goes into that. So there are some other options other than just doing it yourself, to really think about how you can incorporate that into your business.
And I was noticing, Kris, in the chat, which very good point. Several of you are in the food world and you're not reselling your food. So I understand that. So some of the stats get tweaked a little bit based on product.
Thanks, Frank. I was actually going to mention that as well. So definitely can't resell wine and other things to be consumed. So wanted to touch briefly on luxury. As Frank mentioned in the 2023 trends update, that really despite inflation and other economic challenges, the luxury market is growing and does expect to continue to grow over the next year, which seems a little counterintuitive with what we're experiencing right now in the economy. But what is primarily being driven off of is that luxury retailers have really focused on creating those experiences for customers. You've heard us talk about this kind of as a common theme throughout the presentation, but they're really looking to connect and create experiences and personalizations that speak to those customers and their overall values. That integration for the luxury market has been key across all of their various omni-channels, including physical, digital, and even exploration into the metaverse, kind of going back to that connection with your younger market. So, it's very key for the luxury brand to really focus on this. One of our stats that we have on this slide is the luxury brands rely on approximately 20% of their customers to account for most of their sales. So as you can see, that customer relationship and creating that value is critical for them to basically have customers that return and speak to the ultimate brand. And then this, basically to kind of summarize, the success of luxury brands and future growth has been due to a handful of items that we kind of touched on this previous slide. But really what we've seen is the increase of availability through online shopping. So historically, your high-end brands were slow to really embrace selling online, as they were really focused on those physical touch points, which I touched on the previous slide. But the pandemic really forced that shift into digital. And what this has allowed for these luxury brands is to have access to broader markets, specifically the millennials and the Gen Z, who are already more prone to shopping online and are very mobile savvy. Additionally, the pandemic caused a shift of high net worth individuals moving out of kind of your traditional iconic cities to less populated states, to the Sunbelt states, which has really allowed luxury retailers to open up new store locations and access to new markets where historically they hadn't ventured into because there wasn't the geographical need there of their ultimate customer. And then last, luxury has really embraced this term called phygital, or this phygital concept, which is the blend of physical and digital experiences that allows them to engage with their customers across all omni-channels. So they're offering intelligent dressing rooms, live scan technology, digital gaming, and metaverse, which really allows them to personalize that shopping experience both in person and via the web. So a lot going on with luxury. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kris Dunning for a discussion on grocery.
Thank you, Sharon. Let me advance this here. Sorry about that little technical difficulty. Yeah, so on grocery, a few themes that we're seeing here. It's interesting when you compare the U.S. to other markets when it comes to, people that can deliver on sustainability and those types of things. In Europe and other places, they value that and they'll actually pay extra, where in the US, they do value sustainability in those things, but they won't pay extra, for companies that are doing that. So in essence, they will give you loyalty. So that's a good thing. But really, it's, you need to communicate that, be able to do that. But it's interesting when you compare that. the people that are, or the grocers that are doing really well right now are really connecting with their customers well. That's a, they're seeing increases on the online portion at probably double the rate that they're seeing in the general stores, general consumables. So that's a growing area. If you're not investing there, it's something that you really need to think about. There was a poll, a McKinsey study, 75% of the consumers are actually worried about, the economy. But they do intend to, still grow their spending, but it's probably going to be more online. So I think a lot more of the grocery type items will be shifting more towards online, where a lot of the perishables and other things will be, still in the stores. A huge trend, which I think a lot of grocers are really capitalizing on, is the healthier lifestyle. So 75% of consumers really want to have a healthier lifestyle, and personalization is an area where they're really capitalizing on that. So loyalty apps and other things are a big investment area. The more personal you can be, the better. Having promotions and other things that are directed at an individual customer versus a market tend to be more effective. Getting engagement with the customer by allowing them to have some input into like their lifestyle, the type of health choices they want to make, and then driving things like meal prep and meal plans and those types of things can make a big difference in getting that engagement from your customers. There is a lot of AI that's starting to happen here. I see this every year at NRF, where there's some time spent on this. Kroger's been a leader. Obviously they've got a lot of scale, so they've got a lot of money to invest, but they're using AI to create basically digital stores where they can do predictive analytics and other things to understand how people are going to flow through the stores. They're using other data other than just the purchasing data, like weather and other things, to make predictions about where they need to have inventory and other things like that. So they're using a lot of information, investing a lot in technology. So there is areas where I think that should be an area of focus for grocers to understand how you're going to use some of this information to help better drive your stores. When you think of the economy, one last thing I meant to put in there is that, when you think of inflation, there's upsides and downsides with that. The upside with that is that, there is going to be an increase of eat at home through that process, where people are going to be eating more at home. And I think you're going to see more accessibility to talent as, the more people are going to be looking for jobs and those types of things. But you do have the challenge, around, you've got a fixed amount of spend that you're competing for with those customers. There's also, a trend towards, the checkout, right? Really the toughest part, I think, for a lot of retail or grocers to be able to really get well is that checkout process. How do you get the customer out the door so that they think they have a good experience when they leave? There's a lot going into there. It's still fairly pricey to have fully automated, where you're just throwing things in your cart and leaving. But there's definitely a move toward curbside pickup, which can help that process. Almost all the grocers are investing in that. And then we've got the whole consolidation thing. So with that, you've got Safeway and Kroger being the biggest one that we're hearing about. There's a lot left to go there. The regulators, there's a lot of lawsuits that have been filed on this. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. They would be about 5,000 stores combined. They have indicated that they would divest a number of those stores if they were to do that. I think they've disclosed they were looking at 150 to 300. I think other filings have said that it'd be up to 650. I think regulators will be they're going to want a lot more info on that, because Safeway did that the last time they did a big deal, where I think they sold like 300 stores to, I think it was a Northwest grocer, Hagen, who several months after that went bankrupt. So there's a lot of challenges there, I think, ahead to see if that's going to go. But if it does go through, it's going to make it tougher for regional and smaller grocers, because that's going to just further increase their buying power and some other things. But you do have the advantage of maybe picking up some locations and markets where they're getting out of. And then also, you can be more personal than they can within the communities that you're in. So with that, Amy, you want to launch our next, and I think this is our last polling question here. And again, as I mentioned, there's a lot going on in this space with automation on the self-checkout, which is most grocers have, but really that fully automated where you just throw things in your cart. I think that's still a few more years out before we're going to see more widespread, especially in the grocery segment for that.
We are at time, so I'm just going to leave this up for a few more seconds, and then we can close this out.
Just real quickly, I wanted to add, because I see a number of questions in the chat, and obviously we're at the top of the hour. We want to hold everybody up. We have the contact info, so for anybody who's asked a question, we will get back to you. There's some pretty interesting questions we'd love to address, so we will get back to you post-presentation here.
Yeah, so here's kind of the poll results. Not surprised with this. We probably should have had a bigger time frame in here. I think that that model will ultimately be more widespread. I think it's been around for a while, but it's still in its infancy when you look at a total rollout to the general public. Just a reminder here. One to thank everyone for the time today. We do have a bit more detailed look back, and Mike, maybe you can spend 30 seconds just explaining what this session is going to be.
Yeah, thanks, Kris. So as we talked about, one of the products we work with is called Workday Adaptive Planning. And so we're going to have a webinar on April 4th, 10 a.m. Pacific, with Workday to really talk through, again, specific use cases of how this can help your business. We're going to talk through how we can use this technology to help manage inventory better, optimize, to have better visibility into your operations, and have that ability to embed that data into real-time decisions that really drive, again, many facets of your business. So love to have you join the webinar on April 4th. I think the link is in the chat or in the QA, if I understand right.
Yes, so in the upper right-hand corner of their console, there is an image they can click on that will take them to the registration page and more information.
Perfect.
And we are at time, so thank you, Frank, Sharon, Kris, and Mike for a really great presentation today. And to our audience, feel free to reach out to any of the presenters if you have additional questions. Their contact information is in the slides as well as in your console. And if you met all CPE requirements, your certificate is available to download now in the CPE progress window. A copy will be emailed within 2 weeks if you have difficulty downloading it now. And then finally, here's a link to an online survey for today's presentation. And thank you for joining us. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.